Okay, you guys are all muted. We're just gonna wait for everybody to kind of get here before we start breath. I'll give everybody at least another minute or two to come in. Looks like we have a pretty decent crowd tonight, so I appreciate you guys showing up. We'll let everybody get here, and then we'll get started. So I'm not gonna wait too long, just probably another minute, maybe 2 minutes, and then we'll go from there. All right, guys, let me go ahead and get started with the breaststroke. Can you guys hear me? Everybody thumbs up if you can hear me. I can see you. Thumbs up. Okay, so breaststroke. We're going to start with, you notice I put breaststroke last. We did free. We swim the most free, so that makes sense. And then we went into some bat. We did the 2 long axis strokes first. And then we went into our short axis strokes and we did fly. And now we're finishing up with the last of the 4 strokes with breaststroke. So this will be the 4 strokes. If you missed any strokes, they're all on the YouTube channel. You should go watch them. They're not that bad. They're like 20 minutes at most. I say breaststroke for last because I feel like it's the most complicated. It's the most different stroke. And what I mean by different is if you take top 8 breaststrokers in the world or just 8 fast breaststrokers and you put them side by side or overlaid them, their strokes would all be a little bit different. It's not a cookie cutter stroke. There's still a lot of debate on it, but there are some common things that breaststrokers do that most of your fast breaststrokers do. I'd say almost all fast breaststrokers do some common things. And there's a way that I like to see breaststroke done. And a little bit depends on body style and ankle flexibility and things like that. But there's a certain way that I like for breaststroke to be swum. And so we're going to go through a couple of quick things that the best breaststrokers do. And then I'm going to go through a series of like importance from start to finish on some things involved in the stroke. So the best strokers, what they do, they have the most speed when they extend into their line. Okay. And we're going to go into what a line is. That's a specific topic I want to talk to you about is your body line or your line in breaststroke. But they have the most speed when they go into their line, which means out front. And they have the most speed at the peak of their stroke. So at the top of their stroke, when they come up to breathe, they have the most speed. And one thing is they don't slow much and they definitely don't pause before they go into their line. So they carry speed through the peak or the top part of their stroke. A lot more than normal people that are swimming breaststroke. That's some of the best things that breaststrokers that are good breaststrokers have in common. They have a lot of speed when they enter their line, and that's probably because they carry their speed when they come up to breathe at the max point of their stroke, okay? So priorities, and this is something I kind of touched on fly and breast on our short axis strokes. Our axis strokes, we're swimming more like this and not long axis. It's so important to shoot forward. I said crash forward or lunge forward. Depends on what picture paints it best for you, but we have to shoot forward. I like shoot in breaststroke. You hear coaches say shoot, okay? Shoot forward, okay? That's number one priority. If I had to do like really shoot forward, not just like, okay, I'm gonna go for it. I mean, you have to like shoot, you have to throw your body. And we're gonna get into that a little bit. Chest, body, arms, it's a real dynamic motion, okay? So all this is set up, all your stroke, I mean, you get some propulsion here, but this is all set up to go into your body line. Okay, so the good line, first will be our shoot, and that takes us into a good line, maintaining as much speed as possible. So we want to keep as much speed as possible. And then breaststroke, we're going to get into it a little bit, but the hands have a nice smooth path underwater on the pull. So shoot into your line. You want to make sure you have a nice setup to get into your line. And then we want to make sure hands are smooth on the way around and your elbows stay wide. So we want our elbows to stay wide a little bit. I know you've seen some breaststrokers where they come around like this and they squeeze in. We're actually going to talk about staying wide and why that's a little bit better. So there's some key priorities there, and I'm going to try to talk about them in that order on the priorities. So the number one thing was our breaststroke line. So you talk about what is a line, and a line is fingertips to toes, okay? That's from the top of your body down. So if these were your fingertips and back here where my wrist is or my toes, you want a nice flat line from tips to toes, just like we just did a dry land session. And we talked about holding a good line in your body. It's so important to have a good line in breaststroke. So we want to be, this is a good line, as flat as possible, or even slightly tilted down. I would like where the hips are kind of higher. The reason that's so important is because on breaststroke, we have a lot of drag. When we go and we bend our knees to set up for our breaststroke kick, your hips drop and we get in this position a lot. So it's important to make sure we don't stay in this position because we're creating a lot of drag on breaststroke. So we want to make sure we get into a nice body line. Again, a body line, tips to toes, right below the surface. So if this is your body, flat, the surface is right here and your hips are right at the surface. So you're not diving down, okay? That's a mistake I see a lot is people dive down and then the water's here, but they're diving down like this and coming up. And we kind of touched on that on fly about how when you first learn, that's what you're learning a little bit, but then as you get older, we straighten that out and we don't dive so much. So we want to make sure we have a good line from the very tips of your fingers to the very bottom. We want to be able to go straight, okay? So if you in breaststroke with your head up like so, and underwater, your head's up, then you're not in a good line, okay? So line is the important part. All right, so how do you get into the line? And that's our shoot. We want to work on a shoot. So we want to surge the upper body. I see so many people, they swim breaststroke and they do just their neck, just their head. We want to use all this, okay? All this. We want to shoot the hands. We want to throw the body, shoot the body. It's important that you throw the body forward when you do your breaststroke. Shoot your body forward. This is just as important as the hands. So many people caught up doing this with just their hands. Body, throw the body, shoot the body. And that is important because it impacts the timing of your kick, okay? So the body is just as important in the hands. Don't just throw the hands, but allow the body to go forward, shoot forward, okay? And that's how we get into our line. So we shoot, body follows, we get into our line. Can't express that enough of how important it is on your breaststroke, not just to go up and down, but to shoot forward into your line. And again, your line is tip to toes is a straight line. That's what you're trying to get into, a nice body line. Okay, so we're going to talk about our breaststroke pull. Okay, If you know breaststroke a little bit and you heard me talk, breaststroke is a lot of kick. And so your pull is used for two things, to general propulsion. So it does give you a little propulsion, and that usually happens right here at the front part. And then once you pass a certain thing, it's setting you up for your shoot and a good line, okay? So it propels you forward just a little bit, and then it's a setup just to get into that good line that we talked about. Again, the line is so important. So pull, two things, a little propulsion, which is energy going forward, and then to get you in, and it's also a setup, like a wind up for a pitcher to get you into a good body line, okay? So you have to find the balance between the two. Just because you pull too strong, sometimes you pull too strong and big, that can mess up your tempo. So if you pull too little, you're not getting enough power. So it's a fine line on the pull, on how much water to pull, how big to do the pull. And so I'm going to kind of give you some basics on your breaststroke pull. Okay, the shape indicates whether you're doing a good pull or not. You don't want to make a square. Okay, so you don't want to go out and then back and then over and then front like a square. Okay, you don't want to make a square with your arms. It's more of a rounded shape. Okay, so your arms press out, arms go out, and then fingertips go down, palms get back right here, and as soon as they start pressing back, we round it. Okay, so the arm is a round. It makes a rounded shape. So if you're watching it underwater, you would see somebody, they're gonna press out nice. Okay, the fingertips come to the back, and then they round it. I've heard of some people calling it like, you got a propeller blade there, so your elbow stays wide, and then once you press out and fingers come back, you propel it around. Okay, so then you just get it around. There's really nothing. That's starting your setup for the getting into our body line, our shooting, and our getting into our body line. So your position of where you're doing your hands. If you're making a square, so if you're going out and then back and then over and then in, that's not right. You want to be a circle with it. So it's more of a circle motion. That's the best way I can describe it in the air, is if you drew it out, it would be more of two circles instead of a square motion. And it's got a distinct out sweep. Your palms are going to use to face the side of the pool. I like to say where the side and the bottom meet. So like they're going out, but they're also pressing just a little bit down. So it's not just straight out. So it's out and down just a little bit. That's when you're going to be pressing. Generally just outside the shoulders. So not way out here. That's too far. So just a little bit outside the shoulders here. Just pressing there. There's no propulsion yet, but it sets up for making this rounded shape. So you're not really getting any propulsion by the out sweep. You're getting a little lunge, but you're gonna get a nice setup. Okay, the catch is the inward part. Okay, hands carved down and inward. So down and inward, down and inward. Okay, the hands are gonna carve down and inward. Elbow's gonna stay up near the surface. And this is where the breath occurs. So you're pressing out, you're not really breathing, and then as you go down and inward, that's when the breath. Okay, so I see one common mistake is breathing a little bit too early, and the hands are still going out, and you're breathing too early. You should actually spread. You're making yourself a little hole here. Press, and then as you start going down and inward, that's when your breath is going to be. Okay, so think about that. Down and inward. That's when we're going to breathe. That's when the breath occurs, okay? So distant out sweep, you got your inward catch. Okay, we talked about that. So your hands are naturally going to face upward right here. As soon as you go around, they're naturally going to come up. Okay, so here's where we go. This is me, and this is what USA Swimming Guru says is once you make this rounded curve, there's no reason to squeeze it together. I know that there was popular breaststrokers who squeeze. There are breaststrokers who squeeze. In general, okay, you sacrifice a little bit. When you squeeze here, it gets in the way of throwing your body. And we just talked about the number one thing is shooting and getting into our body line. So generally, I want to say wide like this, but just a natural elbow position, okay? Natural elbow position. Naturally follow the hands, palms here. So you don't have to get in so tight in here. You can just let the elbows here, and there can be a little bit wider as your hands shoot forward, and that makes room for your body to come in that little area right there. Okay, if you're in tight, it's hard to get your body. Here, you make a little bit more room for your body, so your elbows can stay a little bit wider, okay? And as the hands start to shoot forward, push forward with the elbows. Think push with the elbows. Push forward with the elbows, and then you're gonna stay wide. You don't have to start coming in. You can stay wide. You need to rotate. This is important. Rotate the palms down. Okay, I see a lot of people not doing that, and they still finish like this. We've all, when we were little, we taught like serve the pizza. Okay, so you go around. Okay, you go around this, make the circle. Naturally stay in the nice wide elbow position. Don't squeeze in. Just follow this to the front, and then open up the hands so that the palms finish down. Okay, so that's important. Okay. So we talked about that. So transition to shooting forward, go around, go here, go in, shoot. And that's the recovery, okay? The pull, common flaws, breathing too early. Like I talked about, you're gonna breathe even before you start to separate. That's wrong. You wanna go press out, start your down and inward when you're breathing. So skipping the out seat, some people just go straight back and they don't get a good out sweep. That would be another common problem. And then getting stuck, and this happens a lot with you younger guys, is you pull way back and you get stuck back here like this with your elbows by your side. You go too far back, your body gets upright, you're very vertical in the water, and then on the way back, your elbows get narrow and your body can't go to the front. And then probably another common would be the sharp square breaststroke. Okay, it's a out, down and in, and then rounded in. If you actually watch some of the underwater clips, it actually looks, once they get to there, they release the water and get right back to the front, okay? So, remember, it's important to kind of get speed and also move water. That's probably the most difficult thing about the breaststroke pool. So you want to win the spaces. Breaststroke is won between the strokes, okay? And so what that means, it goes back to that thinking about the line. So between the strokes, so the stroke happens here and then the kick, that line, when we're hitting the line, we learn that's the most important thing right off the get-go is best swimmers have good speed when they're in line. Second thing is they carry the speed to the highest point to the inline part. So we want that's where breaststrokers really won. Okay, you see breaststrokers come up, then they go down, and then all of a sudden there's one breaststroker that whoop, and then she comes up or he comes up ahead. That's where it's won though, is in between the strokes. So that's an important note to make sure breaststroke is won. I like a breaststroke pull that it feels like or it looks like the body is leaning forward, where it's not like so far coming up. I know you see breaststrokers coming high out of the water. Usually if they're coming high, it's high and forward and not high and so much vertical, because as soon as we get too far back, the hips go down and we drag. So I like a neutral head position, looking forward out of the eyes, and just a nice neutral head position. And not much head movement. If you do move your head, it's controlled and smooth. It's not a lot of jerking. So the head moves with the body, in line with the body, but it's not a lot of jerking. When you see little guys swim breaststroke, they move their head a lot. That will be too much. So you want to keep your head still. So then last, we'll talk about, not last, we'll talk about timing next. This is a key thing, and I think I was a lot older before I realized, and I think swimming has changed a little bit, but the breaststroke kick happens later, very later in the stroke. And when you're learning and when you're younger, you want to pull kick so fast that you're almost doing them at the same time. But the breaststroke kick happens late in the stroke. So when do the knees need to bend and bring the heels up? So at the end of the inward part of our stroke. So we go out, we start here, we come in right when we start to go. This is the inward part, right when we start to go into the transition here. That's when we should start bringing the heels up. Key, bring the heels up fast. So when you go to do your breaststroke kick, heels come up fast. The heels need to come up fast. They don't do any propulsion. So when you're in a streamlined leg position on breaststroke, and then you bring those heels up, they need to come up fast and quick. They're not producing any propulsion when you're doing that. So you want to wait. all the way through this. Press out, inward sweep, pressing down and in. We start our transition, and then we start bringing the heels up. That's just when we're bringing them up. So when do they turn outward? So we're bringing them up. So when do they make that outward frog kick position and kick back? When do they do that? That's as the arms reach full extension. So the arms get out. Arms are getting a full extension, okay? And the head is almost at full extension. I mean, just barely not at full extension, but almost at full extension. That's when we kick, okay? That's when this part happens. So they come up when you start all the way to here. Once you press down and in and you're starting your transition to your recovery, the heels come up. You finish out front with your arms, boom. Head's almost down. Then we do our drive our heels back, okay? So that's the timing of the stroke on your breaststroke. So I would say you do your pull with your legs in a streamlined position. So your streamlined position with your legs, I'm referring to your legs just being straight. So you do your pull with your legs like this. Then you basically do your kick with your arms like this. So pulling, your legs are still. Okay, then you're here, then you're kicking. Okay, so you're not doing one like a snow angel breaststroke where both things are moving at once. Okay, so it's a pull, then a kick. So late timing is a thing that happens on breaststroke. You're not bringing your heels up fast enough, and your arms are extended upper body not in line. I see a lot of people doing their breaststroke like this, and they don't get into your line. You don't shoot into your line. That causes you to have bad timing. So again, when you do your pull, your legs should be basically streamlined. When you do your kick, your arms should be almost as streamlined, okay? So that way you know your timing. Don't let them fight each other. Now, we all know breaststroke kickers are special. They got those feet out, so we'll talk kick real quick. Basically, your heels come up and your knees, if these were my knees instead of elbows, these are my feet. Your knees go down and your feet come up. Okay, that's all it is. Your knees bend, feet come up, your knees go down. When your knees go down right there, that is a very bad position. That creates this in the water, which is not a good line. So when you bend your knees and you set yourself up like this for your breaststroke kick on your back half of your body, that drops the hips, that creates a bad position in the water. So we want to spend the least amount of time there as possible. So you want to spend minimum time there. So most breaststrokers have knees at about a shoulder width. Okay, so when they if these are their knees, when they bring them up for their kick, they're about shoulder width. So if you're standing there, I always say you're inside one of those orange cones, and you bring your knees about even out to your side as your shoulder. So if you're looking from behind, knees are about shoulder width when they bring them up. So that would be easy. It makes it a little easier. It depends on your ankle flexibility of where you can put your knees, okay? And then once we kick, we just want to push that water back and slightly down, okay? Some people do this and they kick that water out. You don't want to press your feet out. You just want to think. You're bending your knees, you're bringing your feet up and out to the side, and then you're just pushing that water back, And when you push the water back, if you've done over the hump drill with me, where we hang in the water and hips are in a bad position, and we push that water back, and your feet go back, and they go slightly down, back and down. So they are going to go down they naturally do that when you extend them. Because of that, because they go this way and go down, you have to work on bringing them back up into body line. So you have to kind of make that a conscious effort to bring them back up and quickly into line as possible. Because when we go around and they kick back like this, feet are out, they push back, they go down, and then we got to bring them back up so that we're in our nice line, okay? So to increase speed in breaststroke, pulling harder does not really make you go faster. It's the amount of time you spend out front, okay? So it's almost the same stroke. I would say the same stroke, 100, 200. It's the amount of time you spend in between the strokes, okay, where we talk about winning the line. So if you want to increase your speed, less glide, bring the heels up faster on the kick. Okay, so we don't want to get but the key is we always have to hit our line. So even if we're going less glide, we have to hit our line. That's the important. We can't stop short. We can't have bad line. So if you want to go faster breaststroke, hit your line, have less glide. So that's 100. 200, you're going a little bit more glide. So that's the difference in the stroke. That's how you get a little bit faster. It's basically the same stroke. A lot of people think you just turn it up a little bit. You will have to have a faster tempo on the back half of your breaststroke races. Okay, so a thing I see a common error is diving down, and then once the swimmer goes down, then they have to come back up like this, and then that puts the hips in a bad position. Okay, so I feel like that's another common thing I think. So we talked about shoot forward. Just shoot forward, and don't try to dive down. Okay, because if you dive down, hey, that's great. Your hips came up. But then the first thing you're gonna have to do is reach back towards the surface, and that's gonna create bad hip position. So that's a common mistake I see also on your breaststroke is people when they go to the front, when they go to do their shoot, when they go to press, they go down too deep, and then they end up making too much of this shape. Okay, so key takeaways, breaststroke. Number one thing, hit your line, hit your line, hit your line. Number two, and the line is tips to toes, flat, good. Number two, shoot to your line. Shoot to your line, okay? Don't get there easy, get there aggressively, shoot to your line, okay? And number three, win the space between the strokes. And that kind of goes with number one and number two. I would say win the space between the strokes, okay? So three things you're gonna take away. Nice, smooth, rounded pull. Elbows a little bit wider. Makes room for the body to come to the front. Okay, so breaststroke is a dynamic stroke. Thanks for bearing with me. We're going to do a little bit this weekend. So I know this is the last thing on schedule so far this week, but we'll do a little bit more as the weekend goes on. Okay, so stay tuned. Hope I wasn't too much of a bore. You guys got a little bit out of it, I hope. I know I looked like Hayden was about to fall asleep, but I think we woke him up. It's good to see everybody. Even though some people didn't make the dry land, don't worry, I'll put the video on YouTube. If you didn't make the dry land, maybe you can get it on your own, okay? Thumbs up. All right, it's good.
Thank you.